You will want to sit down for this. Right now, as we speak, powerful weather models are painting a picture of a significant and potentially disruptive weather event for next week. A major push of very cold Arctic air appears to be organizing, and it is poised to plunge southward into large portions of the United States. This is not a subtle, gentle slide into autumn. This is a forecast for a genuine shock to the system, a dramatic shift in the atmospheric pattern that could bring the first real taste of winter to millions of people far ahead of schedule. We need to talk about what this means, because being forewarned is being forearmed, and this is a forecast that demands our attention. The reason this particular forecast warrants such a close look is the scale and the source of the cold. This is not just a minor cool front. The models are indicating a deep reservoir of Arctic air, the kind of air mass that typically stays locked up near the North Pole until much later in the year, is about to be dislodged. When this type of frigid air moves south, it does not just lower the thermostat by a few degrees. It can cause temperatures to plummet rapidly, creating a stark contrast with the milder conditions that preceded it. This kind of sudden change has consequences for everything from agriculture, infrastructure, daily life, and personal safety, which is why we are taking the time to break it down. This is more than just a weather story. It is a story about preparedness and awareness. A sudden cold snap can strain power grids as millions of homes turn up their heaters all at once. It can create hazardous travel conditions as rain quickly turns to ice on untreated roads. It can damage crops and gardens that are not yet hardened for winter. For people who work outdoors, or for those who are vulnerable to the cold, an event like this can pose a serious health risk if they are not adequately prepared. Understanding the potential timeline and the expected impacts is the first and most crucial step in navigating the week ahead safely and without undue disruption to our lives. So the central point tonight is this: a significant change is coming. Several complex and highly respected weather models are signaling that a strong blast of Arctic air is on a trajectory that will bring it deep into the United in the coming days. This event is likely to deliver a potent mix of much colder temperatures, periods of rain, significant mountain snowfall, and gusty winds to various regions. It is time to pay close attention to this evolving situation. To understand any weather forecast, especially more than a few days out, you have to understand the tools of the trade. Meteorologists rely on a suite of sophisticated computer models to predict atmospheric behavior. Think of these models as incredibly complex simulations of the future. They take current observations of temperature, pressure, wind from around the globe, and use the laws of physics to project how conditions will evolve. For this forecast, we are focused on two heavyweights in weather modeling: the American GFS model, the European ECMWF model, the Euro. Right now, the compelling fact is the degree of agreement between these models. Both GFS and the Euro show a clear pattern shift, allowing Arctic air to surge south. There are subtle differences, but the fundamental story is the same. GFS is depicting a more aggressive, colder event, pushing frigid air farther south with greater intensity. The European solution shows a significant cooldown, but is milder and more restrained. When independent models tell a similar story, confidence in the overall trend rises. We can also use newer tools. One is the Google DeepMind model, which uses AI and machine learning. It has shown impressive accuracy this season, and it too aligns with the southward push. The convergence of traditional physics-based models and newer AI-driven ones strengthens the case. This is not a model glitch. This looks like a high-probability event. Still, long-range forecasts are living documents, refined with each model run as new data arrives. The key takeaway: do not fixate on one temperature 10 days out. Focus on the overall pattern. Consensus: a ridge of high pressure, associated with warmer air, will build along the west coast. That ridge acts like a wall, forcing the jet stream to buckle and dive south over the central US and the eastern US. That deep dip, or trough, becomes a superhighway, letting dense Arctic air travel from high latitudes down into our backyards. That is the fundamental dynamic we are watching unfold. Now, you might think a discussion about an Arctic blast would have nothing to do with the tropics, but the atmosphere is a deeply interconnected system. What happens in one part of the world can have ripple effects thousands of miles away. Turn briefly to the warm waters of the Atlantic. An area of disturbed weather in the tropics is being watched closely. The National Hurricane Center rates high odds of development into a named storm in the next few days. Most reliable models currently show the system curving out to sea. That track keeps it away from U.S. landfall, but its indirect influence cannot be dismissed. a large storm offshore can act like a boulder in the atmospheric river. It can change the position and strength of high-pressure and low-pressure systems. That helps steer weather across the continent. A strong storm off the east coast can reinforce the pattern, letting Arctic air plunge south. It can deepen and enhance troughing over the eastern U.S., essentially holding the door open for cold air longer. Even a distant storm can sling tropical moisture north. That moisture can be drawn into coastal systems, producing heavier rainfall for coastal communities in the Carolinas and New England. So how does a massive volume of Arctic air travel from the top of the world all the way down to the United States? It all comes down to the behavior of the jet stream. That high-altitude river of wind circles the globe. Normally, a strong, stable jet stream flows west to east, acting like a fence that keeps polar cold up north. But sometimes that fence breaks down. The jet stream begins to meander, forming large wavy buckles. Those waves are what create our weather. Crest, called a ridge. Ridge equals high pressure. Ridge equals warmer, calmer weather. Dip, called a trough. Trough equals low pressure. Trough equals stormier, colder weather. Models show a very strong, persistent ridge building over western North America. As the ridge strengthens, it forces the jet stream to buckle downstream. That buckling creates a deep, plunging trough over the central and eastern U.S. That trough is the critical feature. It becomes a direct pathway for cold, dense air from the Arctic and northern Canada to pour south, like water flowing downhill. The cold does not arrive all at once. It advances in a series of waves or pushes. Each push is tied to a reinforcing cold front at the surface. The first push may bring a crisp, autumnal feel. Subsequent pushes dig deeper into the trough and bring truly frigid temperatures. Think of it like an invasion. First wave establishes a foothold, then the main force follows. That is why we expect multiple cold shots over the next 1 to 2 weeks, not a single cold day. Section 5. A day-by-day journey, the timeline of the chill. To make this forecast more tangible, let us walk through a simplified potential timeline based on the current model guidance. Remember, specific timing will be refined, but this gives us a general framework. Starting today, October 6th, and for the next couple of days, the initial setup begins. A preliminary cold front is already on the move, pushing east out of the north-central United States. This will introduce a noticeable but not extreme cooling trend for parts of the Midwest and the Northeast. The western states will remain generally cool, particularly in the higher elevations, setting the stage for the more dramatic changes to come later in the week. The middle of next week, around Wednesday the 8th through Friday the 10th, is when the main event is expected to begin in earnest. This is the window when that deep trough in the jet stream really digs in. A much stronger surge of colder air will press into the northern tier and begin its march toward the east coast. This is when the GFS and European models begin to show their differences more clearly, with the GFS indicating a sharper and more significant drop in temperatures. During this period, areas that were mild just a day or two before could experience a dramatic shift, with falling temperatures and brisk northerly winds making it feel even colder. Looking ahead to the weekend and into the following week, from approximately Saturday the 11th through Tuesday the 14th, the pattern remains very active. The models suggest that storminess will increase significantly across the western United States and the central United States. The Rocky Mountains and the Cascades could see very heavy snowfall, a major event for so early in the season. At the same time, there is a distinct possibility that a new low-pressure system could form off the southeast coast or the mid-Atlantic coast, bringing a prolonged period of drenching rain and gusty winds independent of the inland cold. While the big picture points to a widespread cooldown, the impacts will not be felt equally everywhere. The geography of the cold air's path means some regions will take a direct hit, while others will feel a glancing blow. Based on model consensus, the core of the coldest air appears aimed at the north-central states, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, then spreading east across the Great Lakes into the Northeast and New England. These areas will see the sharpest temperature drops, with daytime highs possibly stuck in the 30s or 40s next week. The Rocky Mountain region and the Northwest are also in for a very active, cold period. Positioned on the western edge of the main trough, this area is prime for storm development. Higher elevations of the Rockies, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and the Cascades, Washington, Oregon, this pattern translates directly into snow. And not just a few flurries. Models show potential for significant heavy snowfall, possibly feet in the highest peaks. Meanwhile, the deep south and southeast are on the southern fringe of the cold. Temperatures will cool but less extremely, while a developing coastal low could bring days of cloudy, wet, windy weather, and potentially flooding rains depending on track and intensity. Finally, the West Coast, California, Oregon coast, Washington coast, will likely be under a building ridge of high pressure. This typically means milder and drier conditions, a stark east-west divide driven by the winding jet stream high above. It is critically important to understand that this upcoming weather event is not just about the number on the thermometer. An Arctic blast brings a full suite of weather hazards with it, and precipitation is chief among them. Along the leading edge of the advancing cold fronts, the clash between the cold, dry air and the warmer, more humid air it is displacing will generate bands of showers and potentially thunderstorms. This will be the first sign of the changing weather for many, a line of wet weather sweeping through before the temperatures begin their steep decline. This initial rainfall can make roads slick just as the cold air arrives. The most significant precipitation story, however, will likely be the snow. In the mountainous west, this pattern is a powder-making machine, with ample Pacific moisture and cold air from the trough, the perfect recipe for heavy mountain snowfall. We are talking about the potential for major accumulations in the Cascades and throughout the Rockies. This is a double-edged sword. For ski resorts, it is a massive early-season boon. But for travel over mountain passes, it can be treacherous, leading to road closures and dangerous driving conditions. Even some lower elevation valleys could see their first accumulating snow of the season if the cold air is deep enough. Another major player in this setup will be the wind. As the strong low-pressure system deepens and the cold front sweeps through, pressure differences will create strong, gusty winds. These winds will have two effects. First, they will make the cold temperatures feel even colder. This is the wind chill factor, and it is a serious threat to exposed skin. A temperature of 35 degrees can feel like it is in the low 20s with a stiff breeze. Now, with all of this laid out, we must include a very important dose of reality. Forecasting the weather, especially more than a week out, is a science of probabilities, not certainties. The models we use are powerful tools, but they are not crystal balls. The atmosphere is a chaotic system, and tiny, imperceptible errors in the initial data can grow into big differences over time. That is the butterfly effect. It is why a 10-day forecast always carries uncertainty. One key thing that will change is the track and depth of the main trough. A slight shift of just 100 miles to the east or to the west can turn a direct hit of Arctic air for one city into a glancing blow for another. Meteorologists watch these subtle shifts with every model run, which typically update every 6 to 12 hours. So forecasts will be constantly refined in the coming days. The cooldown is likely, but exactly how cold and who sees it will become clearer as we get closer. Other players on the map add uncertainty, including the potential tropical system and western storms that redistribute cold nationwide. Given the high potential for a disruptive cold snap, taking simple, common-sense steps now is the wisest course of action. This is not about panic, it is about prudent planning. First, stay informed. Check your local forecast daily from a trusted source. Use the National Weather Service as your primary source. Make sure your phone receives emergency alerts. Next, home and family comfort. Locate warm clothes, winter coats, hats, gloves, and gather extra blankets. Check your heating system, service if needed. Review space heater safety and give heaters plenty of clearance from flammables. Prepare a home emergency kit, flashlights, extra batteries, a backup phone charger, and non-perishable food and water for a few days. Outside, protect sensitive plants, cover or bring them indoors. Disconnect and drain garden hoses. Pets need a warm, safe place too. Check on neighbors, especially elderly residents and those who live alone. A quick call or knock can make all the difference. Prepare for travel disruptions, check road conditions, inflate your tires properly, keep at least half a tank of gas, and keep a car kit with a blanket, water, and snacks. Simple message, models are warning us. A major pattern change is coming. Prepare, stay informed, look out for one another. That is how we get through any storm, together.